Hello everybody, we have a game with the white pieces against Dylan, rated 771. We're still at the low elos, so there's a lot to learn for a lot of you out there. We start with e4 and he responds with c5, the Sicilian. The way I like to play is to develop my queen's knight to c3, controlling central squares. Natural move. Black goes b6, this is neither center, king safety. It is somewhat development because his idea is to fianchetto. Fine. Um, but it's our turn, and I'm just gonna go f4. This move attacks the center, gains space, puts two pawns towards the center, and then I can develop naturally behind the pawn. Black goes e6. This doesn't threaten anything. It just opens up a diagonal for this bishop, although with the pawn here, I'm not sure how good that diagonal is. Fine. So he's making all pawn moves. Let's just continue with the most natural move. We have both our knights out in their most natural squares. We have an e-pawn and an f-pawn. Nothing, everything's looking good. So he strikes our center with d5. It makes a lot of sense. He needs to put a pawn on one of these squares to fight for the center. So he fights for it. Fine. This attacks our pawn. If we let him take, it's no big deal. If he pushes, it's not really a big deal. If we take and he takes, not a big deal. If we push, like we have all those options. We can do whatever we want. We're in a good place here. If we do push past, he's gonna go for some type of stuff like this, and then we get something like this. That's an option. If we take and he takes, we could push d4 immediately, taking the center. I like that too. I also like ignoring him. I also like pushing. I'm gonna ignore him and just push d4, and now I have all three of the pawns in the center. So, or at least I have the two, and then this one fighting for it. So he takes. We have to take. I don't want to take with the queen when he can play knight c3 so easily. Although we could pin it, so technically you could have taken. Then he takes this pawn. We have to take back. So now he got rid of our nice pawn center, which is unfortunate. However, in return, we got two knights in the center, and his whole army's at home. So I really like my knights. I guess this is the most natural thing, hitting the knight, but instead he develops the other bishop. This attacks the knight twice, so it's currently hanging. Maybe you can defend it like this or like this. However, this is a bishop. I do have a beautiful knight in the center, so there's an argument to be made for not taking the bishop. But because he took all the pawns in the center away, and there are these open lines, I value the bishops a lot right now. So I kind of want to take it. It would also ruin his pawn structure and leave him with a poor isolated pawn. But that pawn will be attacking my knight. I will have to move my knight, which means I will allow the queen trade and lose castling rights if I take that bishop. Do I want that? I don't want that, so I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to take the bishop first. He has to take back. But because he made all of these weaknesses on the light squares, I'm going to see if I can get him to not have the queens staring at each other. So what I mean is I'm going to throw this check in. It's a developing move that's forcing, prepares castling, and the real idea is to get him to put a piece, let's say, here at the end of the line. That's not his queen. I don't think you can force it though. So like if he blocks with his bishop and you would have moved, you can't just move your knight because you lose the bishop. Well, in this case, he moves his king, which is wild because you could defend. I mean, you can't put your knight here, but you could have put a piece here. So he moves his king, which separates it from the queen. So now the queen is all by itself. This looks very weird to me. Although I guess now he can guarantee the queen trade. So the main drawback of his move is it disconnects from the queen. And it's not a developing move, right? And so I'm looking for ways to take advantage of this queen. And I'm noticing knight to e6 gives a check and hits the queen. So basically, he thinks I have to move the knight, and then he gets the queen trade. So I'm just trying to move it in a way that's to my benefit instead of his. So if I take this check, if he could take this knight with a knight, then it would defend the queen, but that's not the case. And so now he just hangs his queen for free, and that's the end of the game. Yeah, quick 11 moves, nothing too crazy, but you can tell he made all pawn moves, right? So now when you play your games, don't make all pawn moves. He moves his king, but there's nothing to be done. The game is over. Doesn't matter what you do. For the sake of simplicity, there's a free bishop and his knight can't develop, right, to get his rook out. And then there's this, which picks up the rook, and then the knight, and I don't even need my army. My queen can do everything by itself. This is just disaster. And it was a nice try by Dylan, but that's not how you play the Sicilian. For every pawn you move, try to move a piece. One pawn, one piece. One pawn, one piece. When you find yourself moving 3 pawns, you're clearly behind on the piece part. So anyway, he attacks our bishop. No one really cares. I'm not going to waste time moving it. You could, but just give him the check and take his rook. And he should resign, right? That's the fastest thing to do, is to get them to resign. I'm going to move my bishop for fun because it's kind of cute that he can't save the rook. So this might just enrage him. Let's see. Probably not. If he played this long, he'll probably continue playing. But I'm not going to take the rook. I think now that this is here, if you notice, his king has no squares. So if you were to give it a check, it would be checkmate, right? And so my initial plan was to go, I was going to go g4 instead of taking the rook, and then g5 checkmate. Now if I go g4, he's going to take me. So how else can I check this king if not with this pawn? Without moving the pieces that are boxing it in. Well, I have this bishop. So maybe we can... The thing is, if you put it here, it would be checkmate. He could do this. Then you take it. He has one new escape square, but who cares? So instead of going b3, which is what a lot of you would do, you go b4. More dynamic, more explosive. And then you go here. You take their attention off the ball with moves like that. And of course, he's forced to go here. We take. He only has one available square. And I'm sure there's a checkmate somewhere. Okay, so funnily enough, I cannot go here. So like, it's got to be something. And if I go this way, he'll go back this way, but then I can get my queen in. So let's go here, because right now my queen is kind of, the only square it has is this and this, which is weird. Okay, so now he moved here. So this check, again, he can sack stuff, but he can always sack stuff, I guess. Whatever, we'll just do it. The game's over. It doesn't matter what I do. I could move my king like this, and then win the game after that. Like, okay, he's coming closer to me. That's good for me. This would be a checkmate, but then he goes here. And then what's the coolest checkmate? I would love to have a castle check, but I don't. Whatever, we'll just box him in. He'll go here. And then we'll castle. It's not a checkmate castle, but it's still cool. And look where his king is. on E3. Hold on, if I can get it to D1, no, E1, where my king started, then I win. That's my goal. How do I shepherd it there? If I go here, he has to go down. I don't want him to escape this way though. So maybe I cut it off. But this would be checkmate, and this would not be checkmate. He would go here. Then I could go here, here. Force him to go to my king square just for giggles. That would be really cool. And then I could run my king up to where his king started. But I'm not going to do that, don't worry. I'm just going to go here and here. And that will be checkmate. Clearly his pieces have nothing to do with anything, no relevance on the game. And he voluntarily comes closer to me, which is kind of funny. I'm just going to cut off the access to go to that side of the board. And then checkmate's unstoppable next move. And look at this beautiful 2 rooks here, 2 bishops here. Doesn't get prettier than that. Let's take a quick look and see how well we did with the principles. Staking our claim in the center. Developing a piece towards the center. Fighting and controlling the center with the idea of improving development once the rook gets here. Onto F1. Developing a minor piece towards the center. Staking my claim in the center. And yes, I have 3 pawns, but they're backed by 2 minor pieces. He has all these pawn moves. They're not backed by any pieces. And so, instead of developing, he's taking, right? Forced move. Forced move. And then here, you have choices. Here, you could definitely... the thing is, if you play c3 and he trades everything, no matter how you take, you end up with an isolated pawn in the center. That doesn't really make sense. You could go back and attack the bishop. That's a move, but then he gets the queen trade and you can't castle. So that's less than ideal. So I think what I did is the way to go. Let's double check the analysis board. Yeah, you're supposed to take it. That's fine. So, hold on. Let me make sure my layout didn't get messed up. Okay, so I took it, which is, I want to say forcing move, not center, not development, not king safety, but basically force in the sense that if you don't really take it, you're making your position worse. Like you're giving black, he has too much going on. You can't let him have it, so you kind of have to take it. So you take it. And I mean, now it's very important not to just retreat your knight. It's still fine. Like if you do it, you're still winning, like better. Not winning, but better. Right? So like knight back to b3 is still +1. But if you do like, oh, it's a blunder because of his move. Oh, no, I see. Okay. So my idea was to, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, I didn't want to just retreat and give him the queen trade and castling rights. I thought you'd be better, but, you know, if you can avoid it, why bother? So they're saying that if I go here and he goes here, which is what I thought he was going to do, I wanted him to end up with a piece here so that if I moved my knight, the queens aren't looking at each other, right? If I move my knight here, the bishop hangs, so you're forced to take, right? And now if he takes with the knight, then you can move the knight and the queens aren't staring at each other. If he takes with the queen, you can move the knight, but you also have the added possibility of this queen f3 counterattack. It's interesting, but they're saying takes with the knight is best, and then when you move to, let's say, I don't know, just pressure a pawn, They're saying you lose most of your advantage because you traded off your developed pieces and you helped Black's knight develop, and so you also liquidated your center, so where's your advantage? That makes a lot of sense. True, true. But that's also what happens if you don't calculate fully to the end of the line. So anyway, so in this position, yeah, I totally missed a very obvious move, which is queen f3. Which is kind of crazy, but what are you going to do? Very obvious, completely open diagonal, and there's nothing he can do about it because the diagonal is just so weak. So that just wins on the spot. I mean, he gets a knight, but you get a rook. He's a little close. He's kind of around your king, but you have pieces here, so you'll be fine. Yeah, so queen f3 definitely. But I blundered my advantage, so now it's just an tech. If black plays perfectly, it's an equal game. But he doesn't. He immediately moves his king and blunders the entire game. Okay, so from an analysis standpoint, was that my only huge blunder? Hold on. E takes D. E takes D. Bishop B5. Bishop D7. Queen E2. Oh, that's just a long line, though. Okay. So I go here. He takes, I take. He takes, I take. He goes here. Yeah, so queen f3 is definitely what you want to do. And if you are going to move your knight, you want to move it to b5, so that after takes, he has to like move his king, so so he doesn't get forked on c7. And then I guess you just develop your bishop. Okay. Yeah, this leads to just a bunch of trades. Yeah. So you want to keep the pressure as opposed to trading everything. You'll only have a very limited time to take advantage of this weak diagonal. And the second you move your knight, you're no longer going to have that coverage of the c6 square. So you really have to just go queen f3 now. Yeah, so that was my one big blunder, and the game is over after that. That's what happens when you tunnel vision. You see? It's important to take a step back and look at the board. Because that stuff is so obvious, but your brain is already looking at something specific. So that's kind of funny. Alright, we're getting another game. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Submit your rapid games in the Discord. Like, comment, subscribe. Goodbye.